Hi, I'm Maggie Broderick, author of Knitting Wool Diaper Covers from start to finish. We're going to do some short rows here on a pair of shorties. These could be longies or shorties or capri pants, anything like that. And right now you can see that I've already done some work. I have my waistband with my ribbing and my eyelet holes. And here is the back of my shorties. And this is the stitch marker. The green stitch marker is stitch marker A in the Berg Baby Gear pattern for longies, shorties, and capris. This is the stitch marker that marks the beginning of your round. And you can see that since I've already done a short row, here I have placed stitch marker B, and that's the purple one. So we have A at the beginning of the round and B at the end of the short row. And in the pattern, I have done, on this set of short rows, I've already started knitting. There's one stitch right here before I begin my quarter of the number of stitches in the round for the short row. The short row is for the bum room, of course, for your diaper cover to have a little extra room in the behind. And so this stitch is here because we don't want to have our short row exactly where the stitch marker is. If it were there, you would be more likely to have a gap and some messiness there. So we don't want to do it. We want to have it just after. So that's why there's one stitch. And then I have about a quarter of my stitches. You can do a bit more than a quarter if you'd like a little extra room. No problem there. And then I've placed stitch marker B. So now that I have gone to the stitch marker B, I'm going to do my first wrap. And just as it says in the book and in the pattern, we need to slip that first stitch onto the needle. Once it has been slipped, bring your yarn to the front and then wrap your stitch and turn your work around. So you'll see there's a wrap here. See how that's wrapping the stitch? It's going to come all the way around the stitch. I then slip the same stitch back onto the needle and see how you have the area where you'll have that wrap covering the gap. Stitch marker, and now I have to prepare to do my purling through the short row area. I'm a continental knitter, but this will work just fine if you're an English style knitter or any other peculiar way you may like to do it. We're all individuals, and any way is fine. The wrapping method works well with any way that you'd like to do it. Just keep that tension nice and even. You'll see I'm working with some Cascade 220 here. I thought it would be the easiest to see for you. This is some blue Cascade 220. Now, something like this, it's a bit less forgiving of the short rows because if you had a nice poofy one-ply variegated colorway, that would disguise your short rows a bit better. And something like this, especially in a really light color, like a light pink or a pale blue, those short rows are going to be a little bit less forgiving. It's a little bit more obvious where they begin and end, but this is also easier to see. So you see now I've purled back to stitch marker A, and there is one stitch before stitch marker A. Now, same idea, I need to wrap this stitch. So I get my yarn ready for wrapping, bring it to the back, slip the stitch, allow it to wrap as I turn my work again. Now we've wrapped both sides, and you slip it back on again. Now this is where I like to be really careful to kind of make sure everything's lining up correctly. I'll show you later that you can tweak it some more. But of course now we're going to knit through our short row area again, just creating 2 extra rows in this short row segment. On your woolies, your longies or shorties, you'll have several sets of short rows depending on how large of a size you're making. These are a medium, so I'll have 4 sets, which is a pretty average amount. Okay, we're getting close to doing our gap covering by unwrapping the stitch. And I knit over to that wrapped stitch, which is just past stitch marker B. Here's stitch marker B, and you see down here that there is this extra bit that is wrapping the stitch. Here's the exciting part. Now, I am very influenced by Kat Bordy, and this is very similar to her technique. We need to take this part that's the wrap and stick it behind our lovely stitch. And you see how it's sort of not exactly right there? We need to move that stitch up. So this stitch now, the original stitch, will cover up that stitch. Once I've done that, I reverse the mount so that you don't have a twisted stitch. In Kat Bordy's method, she actually does the changing of the mount at a different point, but I like to do it this way. I find for working in the round on woolies that it works best for me. You may want to experiment. Now the next step is that we are going to knit those two stitches together by going into the backs of the two stitches. See that? So we're going to stick our needle through the back, do a knit stitch, pull it through, and here's a good point to tweak and tighten up, and be careful. This is not a point when you work very quickly. This is when you just take a look at it and make sure everything's just right and hidden the way you like it to be, and maybe tighten up a bit. Now I'm knitting all the way through my round because I need to get to the next wrap. And the next